Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box. So it was on this day in 1997, I remember it like yesterday, that the funeral of the GOAT, my favorite singer of all time, Frank Sinatra, took place. Now, I've done loads of videos on Frank about my favorite album, about my favorite albums, about how he invented the concept album, about how he worked with such great arrangers, my favorite being Don Costa. So you can check out my channel for that. But today I want to talk about what his funeral symbolically meant for American culture and for many parts of world culture. And this was one of the two funerals in my mind where it signaled the death of the generation before the boomers. In modern pop culture, for those of us who grew up in the second half of the 20th century, there's sort of boomer culture, the current culture and pre-boomer culture, whether it be the greatest generation, the silent generation, or indeed the generations prior. And Sinatra was one of the people who, in my view, were the two titans that represented that cultural era. People who came of age before or during the Second World War and carried America and the world through to just right at the end of the 20th century. Sinatra was one of these people. Ronald Reagan, who died in 2005, just a few years, or 2004 rather, just a few years after Sinatra, was the other. And I don't know if the world has ever been the same, because even though boomer culture changed a lot, and the cultures that are now antagonistic to the boomers, the Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z in particular, and there's good reason for that, don't get me wrong, there was something that was just very different about a generation shaped by the Depression, shaped by war, shaped by having fathers who, in many cases, grew up without electricity, running water, the automobile. And here was this generation that had both a mix of the poverty of the Great Depression, but the great inheritance of all of these modern inventions like electricity, the automobile, radio, recorded sound, all of this great, wonderful stuff. And it was a generation that, while I don't like these generalizations too much, there was something that was, when they were right or when they were wrong, they carried themselves with a kind of dignity that we've never really recovered from. I mean, who really lost the Second World War? Maybe it was our dignity, because this generation had it, but the generation subsequent, a lot more laid back, for better or for worse. And Sinatra was the iconic musician, actor, host, entertainer, everything of that era. And Ronald Reagan, who started as an entertainer from that era, became the ultimate expression of political leadership from not of that era, but of a person who grew up in that era. He became the sort of grandfather of the Western world in the 1980s. And he was the last president of that generation. Clinton was a boomer. Bush was a boomer. And who knows, we'll maybe have a millennial leader. Many countries already have had millennial leaders. I mean, the leader of El Salvador, I believe, is a millennial. And so Sinatra and Reagan represented something very unique. And the funeral of Sinatra was kind of a funeral for that era, much as Reagan's was a few years later. And it's really interesting that a man born in an age of black and white and grew up in an age of the Depression died in a 1990s where the internet, albeit in a semi-embryonic stage, was there. His funeral is only 2 years before Napster would change the music industry forever. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Love you, Frank, as always. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.